Good morning, beautiful people. We are live. It is Friday, the 11th of October. It is 9 a.m. British summertime. And before I even get cracking, I need a glug of warm water. How are you doing out there? I hope you are beautifully well, gloriously well. Thank you for being here as ever. I totally and completely appreciate it. Good morning, all. Good morning, all. Grand risings, grand riding, I see, from Healing the Silence. Hello, Brett and Katie and Crazy Bunny and Randy and Craig and Jilly MC and Soul Sound and JDV and Armand and Sarah Jane and Shalini and Steve Holland and you name it, and Marshcott and Cavan and London Lady and Esoteric Night and Anne-Marie and Maria and Amber and Jasmine. God, I love you all. And Kenneth and Crone and Heldu and Denise and Markcuson and Marlena. And you name it, we are here. Christine, hello, Christine, in the house. How are you all, you beautiful people? I'm in a mischievous mood. Be prepared for me. I'm in a mischievous mood. I'm just double checking myself. I haven't done a final makeup check before I came on. And good morning, the Curly crew. Good morning, the Curly crew. How are you all, you beautiful people? And hello, Shug. How are you? Well, we have a super uber busy show today. Let me see what we have. We will be joined a bit later by Justin Walker, who will be talking to us about the Bradbury pound. We'll also be talking to Michael O'Bernicia on lawful solutions to tyranny. We'll be looking at the Diddy trial, the Lucy Letby inquiry. We'll be looking at Jack O'Sullivan phone data, Zelenskyy with his begging bowl, Christian Brueckner not guilty, more Madeleine McCann lies, Hurricane Milton, Jay-Z and Beyonce on cease and desist notice. UK harvest devastation. You can see it's a busy show, right? You can see it's a busy show. And you know why? We do news differently around here, because someone had to. Yes, they did. Hello and welcome to old and newbies alike, to the show whose very existence is based on the motto of F around and find out. Oh, yes, because that's the kind of gal I am. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, it is. Thank you so much for all of your contributions to our show. I greatly appreciate it, whether that's being here live or being here afterwards, or commenting in the live chat, or commenting, as I say, on the video afterwards, sharing, subscribing, contributing to our show in any way that you can. I appreciate it. And you know what? We have reached episode 40 of Wake Up with Sonia Poulton and guests. I can't believe it. Episode 40. We're here, people. Episode 40. Can I just say we are now on Spotify at viewer request, so you can listen to this as a podcast now. And just to say, episode 40 in numerology, I love the number 4. It's associated with so many good things. Think about it. 4 seasons to the year, 4 edges to a house, or 4 corners to a room, I think. Yes. But 4 is a really kind of grounding number, isn't it? It's associated with practicality, with organization, with hard work. And I believe in hard work. I believe build it and they will come. Oh, yes. Yes, yes, yes. And if you have any story ideas or any investigations you'd like me to follow, and bear in mind, I do receive very, very many, so it can take me a little while to get back to you, but feel free to write to me at soniapoulton@sky.com. I should say I don't always check my social media accounts because there's a whole lot of madness that people post to me in those inboxes, including porn. And it doesn't amuse me, not at all. But if you have something you want to bring to my attention, then please write to me at my email address. And can I also say, I have had so many AI generated tunes, and I thought I should start blasting them, because why not? The first one is from Markcuson. Are you ready for it, kids? Let me add this. Let's go. It's time to wake up with Sonia. Good morning, and risings. It's time to wake up with Sonia Poulton. Sonia Poulton. Good morning, and risings. Isn't that catchy? It's time to wake up with Sonia Poulton. Sonia Poulton. Thank you, Markcuson. I very much enjoyed that. That's wonderful. That's the short version. And no doubt I will probably blast that at some other stage during the show. Isn't it fun? And that came actually in response to me saying I'm very, very concerned about things that are AI generated because I'm worried that it's going to take work away from the real creatives. And Markcuson decided to send me that. Excuse me. Markcuson decided to send me that, and I kind of love it. I know I shouldn't. I know I shouldn't. And Mrs. Pirate is asking, hello, did everyone see the magic northern lights that can only be seen properly through a lens? Aha. Guess what? Guess what? Look at that. That, Mrs. Pirate, let me move over here a little bit so I don't clash with the pictures. That, Mrs. Pirate, is the aurora which was taken by our Zoe, our mod Zoe, last night in Edinburgh. Is this the new normal now? Can we all actually see auroras? You don't have to be like in Denmark or in Norway to be able to see it. Is that the new normal? I'd just like to know. I saw the lights. Amber saw the lights. Grand rising, peeps. Hope you're all amazing, says Crazy Bunny. Crazy Bunny took that picture. What's an earthing sheet? Stephanie is talking about an earthing sheet, and I don't know what that means, but that sounds exciting. Used it for the first time last night and had the best night's sleep for a long time. Thank you for that aurora picture, by the way, Crazy Bunny. I love that. Yes, Crazy Bunny in the house. And wait, I'm new to the chat. Good morning, everyone. The sun is glorious. Shropshire today. Happy to be here with you all. Amber is new to the chat. Embrace her, everybody. Welcome to the chat, Amber. Lovely to have you with us. Grand risings, says Healing the Silence. Interesting. I'm completely behind on these comments. Let me see. You are fired up, Sonia. I am so fired up, Merv. I am so fired up today. I feel like I'm on kind of steroids, but I'm not. The only thing I've had today is a bowl of porridge, because that's kind of traditional for me before the show, and a coffee, and just my warm water. And I'm good to go, people. I am good to go to fight the good fight with you all. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Let's see now. What else have we got going on? Monster storm, Hurricane Milton. Awful. Currently ripping a pure path of destruction across Florida, sadly leaving people dead, tearing through the roof of various stadiums and buildings. First casualties were reported around, let me see, 8:30 p.m. EST, which was about 1:30 a.m. our time. Category 3 storm. Milton began rumbling east, ripping up everything in its path. Took the homes off of Tampa Bay Rays baseball team in St. Petersburg. At least 117 tornado warnings were issued in communities across the state overnight and into the morning. And pretty awful stuff. Pretty awful stuff. One of the most powerful storms to hit the US in recent years made landfall in Florida on Wednesday night, resulting in record flooding and extreme winds that have already caused multiple fatalities. And what was curious was the BBC felt the need to write an article saying, no, Hurricane Milton was not engineered. Why would BBC Verify, led by darling Mariana Springs? She also wrote a separate article about how misinformation is on social media about Hurricane Milton being engineered. Why do they feel the need to say it? And the problem is, the moment that the BBC tell us it's not engineered, you know what I think, right? Because I think you're probably thinking the same thing. So yes, weird stuff indeed. What's your thoughts on Hurricane Milton? And of course, my thoughts go out to anybody who has been devastated in this. Their homes devastated, lost loved ones, lost pets. Awful, awful stuff. Awful stuff. I'm very sorry to hear it. I really am. But as to whether technology is involved, the jury is out for me, I'm afraid. I'm afraid the moment that the BBC suggests that there isn't any technological involvement is the moment that I start to think, oh my God, is there? I'd like to say good news. EE have agreed to let the O'Sullivan family finally access their missing sons network. If you remember, Catherine O'Sullivan was on with us last week. What a terrible story. Her son Jack went missing in March of this year in Bristol. And poor Catherine has been locked in a long-running battle to get his phone data from EE, as she believed it could help unlock the mystery over what happened to him. And really great to hear now that the phone giant has now allowed the release of the data after months of lobbying from Catherine, from herself, the wider Find Jack campaign, and, appearing on shows like this. And it's really sad. Jack 23, who has, and I use the present tense because as far as I'm concerned, he could still be alive. That's possible. It's not impossible, right? So I use the present tense. He has ambitions to be a lawyer. and he'd been to university and he returned to studies to fulfill that. He was last seen at 3:15 a.m. on Saturday, March the 2nd, in the area of Brunel Lock Road, Brunel Way in Bristol. Catherine says that the last picture of him is absolutely him. Catherine said on a social media post, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to EE for allowing the release of the phone data that we have tried so hard to get over the last few months. We really appreciate the help that they have given us. Thankfully, common sense prevailed in the end, and we are so grateful. And so am I, because the poor family, their son, their child, their cousin, their grandson has gone missing. And it's awful, and it makes me sad. And I'm really glad that finally EE have stepped up. My only concern is it's taken so long. What could have missed? What could have been missing that they're not now able to do anything about? So, but anyway, it still is good news. It still is good news. It still is good news. Yes. And like what I'm about to tell you, I tell you what's bad news. President Zelenskyy was here with his begging bowl yesterday, and I say here as in London, at number 10. We've given billions of taxpayer money to this individual and to Ukraine, and there is no end in sight. And I asked on social media, what are your thoughts? Are you happy with this? Are you happy to continue giving money to Ukraine when people in our own country, in our nation, the UK, are starving and facing a bleak winter where they will have to make a stark choice between whether they can eat or heat? Are you happy giving your money to President Zelenskyy? Because I'm not. So I asked that question on social media. What are you thinking? Oh, they're loving Markcuson's Wake Up with Sonia Poulton. Grand Rising. Blind Hip Shaker is late to the game. It is a groovy tune, isn't it, Robert? Happy Friday. I love the jingle, says Vanessa. Peter says UK column could play that song when they introduce you at Bristol. Hilarious. But going back to the Zelenskyy thing, what are your thoughts, people in the chat? Happy to carry on giving money to him? Happy? Dane Wigington is telling us. Ian, I love Dane. I've interviewed Dane. There's quite an extensive interview online where I interviewed Dane. Actually, I don't know if it is that extensive, about 20 minutes, but he's great. And I'd love to bring him back on, actually, on here. Cavan is absolutely not happy about giving more money to Ukraine. And London Lady is emphatically, no. Stephen is not happy about it. Stella hates this government so much. Crazy Bunny is not impressed with the amount of likes, given how many people we actually have watching. Please don't mess with Crazy Bunny. And so let's read some of the comments from social media about Zelenskyy coming into Downing Street more than 2.5 years on from the start of this proxy war. Huge Western support, of course. But Zelenskyy is desperate now. He's really desperate. So he's about to start canvassing the whole of Europe to get some money. And let's read some of the quotes from social media about whether we should continue funding this. John Mack says, I think we need to see the receipts for where all this funding is actually going. I agree, John. I absolutely agree. And Nick says, Action Man back with his handout, looking for a handout. The absolute cheek of this man, knowing many pensioners will freeze to death here, he still comes to beg for more money. I think there's a theme going on here. Graham Kemp says, nobody can seriously believe all these funds are designed to end the war. On the contrary, they are designed to maintain it. They disguise criminal activity, they facilitate money laundering and earn big profits for the usual suspects. And Dr. Janine Morgan, says, no, not at all happy. Much of this money is finding its way back into pockets of politicians. The war is being lost and should never have begun. As always, only the rich and bankers benefit from war. Too many Ukrainian men have already been slaughtered. And Jules cuts straight to the chase. Two globalist puppets, one in a free suit, the other in his Timu combat. Let me see a picture of them both, actually. I think I've got a picture somewhere of them both hugging. Here we go. Let's have a look at this. There they go. Look at that nice little hug. Nice little hug between Sakia Rodney Starmer and Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Is there anyone left in Ukraine? DJ Obsession wants to know. Good question. Anyway, let me continue with these comments. So Jules says, two globalist puppets, one in a free suit, the other in his Temu combat gear. When Starmer announced from the outset it was 3 billion rolling for as long as it takes, it was a big you-know-what to the British public. BlackRock, arms contracts and stuffed brown envelopes. Disgusting. And Trent says, my thinking, once the war is over, the wealthy will have bolted for the underground bunkers to wait out the devastation. But miscalculations do happen, and let's hope they do. Oh, yes, let's hope they do. Don't forget the children being smuggled. I hear you, Murray. Absolutely. And Luke says, I guess they're hiding a Masonic handshake or in that pic, or hand shackle. Is that actually an expression? But I like it. Works for me. Yes, it does. It's like watching a spitting image episode, but in real life, says Shug. It really is, isn't it? There will be Ukraine men left. Is that no? Do you mean no Ukraine men left there, Shalini? Is that what you mean? On a plane, says Starmer looks like he's going to touch him. Oh dear, we don't want any of that, right? There'll be real problems. Let me bring you to the story of Christian Brueckner. Christian Brueckner, of course, is and has been for the last 4 years, apparently, the number one suspect in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. Well, it's absolutely gone to hell in a handbasket this week for the German prosecutors, because Christian Brueckner has been found not guilty of the crimes that they attempted to pin on him. He's a patsy, don't get me wrong. He's vile, he's repugnant, he's a convicted sex abuser, including of children. He's absolutely horrible. He's absolutely disgusting. But one thing I'm absolutely certain of is he did not take Madeleine McCann. And it seems that the German police are just determined to keep him inside for as long as possible until they can find something to hook on him to do with Madeleine McCann. Anyway, I was contacted by so many people this week. And one of them is John Coxon. John is an ex-cop. Ex-Brit cop, and he follows this case, and he's absolutely appalled. And I said to him, John, do you think that we should continue with Operation Grange? Bear in mind, Operation Grange is a minimum of £14 million spent by the taxpayers for a crime that didn't even happen in this country. And the adults around Madeleine have never been investigated. So it's a ridiculous, wasteful investigation, and the only purpose of it, as far as I can see now, is to maintain the status quo of the official narrative, because an awful lot of people are involved in it. Anyway, the quote from John is Wolters, which is the German prosecutor, Hans Wolters. Wolters' credibility is shot to ribbons. The man lives in a fantasy world, and his latest ramblings in the media an embarrassment to his office, which is clearly unfit to hold. These charges were a clear abuse of power and would have failed the most basic threshold test in Germany or anywhere else, given even he doesn't consider there is currently enough evidence to charge him, as in Christian Brueckner, with Maddie's murder. That speaks for itself. The Met supplied this witness and have backed up this ridiculous charade against him, so are equally complicit. Any further bilge in the media isn't worth the paper it's written on. John is in a no F's given kind of mood, right? Public money has been spent for years tossing custard pies at a German paedophile while the truth is hidden from view. Time for the government to pull the plug on this nonsense and face full public scrutiny. And I completely agree with John. I absolutely do. After 17 years of investigating the disappearance of Madeleine McCann and having visited the scene of crime twice, talked with those who live in the area, having communicated with key players, whether they liked it or not, having made 2 documentaries, having appeared on numerous MSM shows discussing the case, having interviewed brilliantly knowledgeable and experienced people, both considered as insiders and outsiders. And after having observed the clown show of the last 4 years of so-called number one suspect Christian Brueckner, I am left to conclude that the original Portuguese police investigation was right. Dear little 3-year-old Madeleine, just 12 days away from her 4th birthday, died in the holiday apartment and was not abducted. The ongoing British police investigation, Operation Grange, is a waste of taxpayer money and must receive no more funding. It must be wound down, and we, the public who have funded it for the last decade, must be allowed to ask questions and receive transparent answers. Sadly and importantly, the disappearance of Madeleine McCann is about so much more than a missing child, as very sad as that is. And I was looking through my files at various things, as you do, because you know you do. And one of the things that I came across was this footage that I believe is actually in one of my documentaries. And the reason that we shot this footage is to show, because part of the story is that the Tapas Nine, or Tapas Seven, if you want to call them that without Kate and Jerry, but say the Tapas Nine, so all of the adults, their story is that from the first night, after the first night they went out with their children, but after the first night, they went out without their children. They went to the Tapas Bar, which was part of the holiday complex at the Ocean Club in Praia de Luz in Portugal. And so what I wanted to show was, because one of the things that Kate and Jerry McCann had said is when they gave one of their PR-friendly TV interviews, they made this whole big thing about how people were criticizing them for leaving the children alone, when in fact, it was only like being in your back garden, right, on an evening. And so I did this walk to show what the comparison between them saying this is only like being in your back garden and what the reality was. And I'm going to play it for you. Let me play it for you. Here we go. This is me coming out of the Ocean Club and walking to the back of the apartments where the members of the Tapas Nine said they had to access to get back to check on their children, on their, what was it, every 15-minute check. But just check this out. Look how long this is. This is literally me walking that walk. So now I'm just coming up to the gate, which actually leads to the apartment where they then said that the sliding door was open and they could access it. But for the most part, they were claiming to have to walk around the back of this apartment. You can see that window there. That's the window that Madeleine was apparently taken out of. And there's just going up to the back of it. Now you can see how long that is. It is. It's just the front of the tapas. They were inside, so even further. Yeah, absolutely important to remember that. And there's the window, which of course now is all barred up. And yeah, so I did that because I was just so sick and tired of the lies. I'm still sick and tired of the lies, as indeed is Craig Campbell, who has been putting up early interviews with the McCanns. Now, the early interviews are really, really insightful because they were not media prepared at all, and they were just kind of speaking, you know, without the kind of preparation necessarily needed in order to be able to convey a story. And they're much more kind of like open, and those interviews, and Craig has been putting them up on his X account and on the TikTok account for Only Cans, I believe. Yes, goodness me, all that fluff and stuff. And as Craig says, that there is still coming out of the restaurant itself before you come out the front of the Ocean Club. Rowie is here, says he's sorry he's late. That's all right, Rowie, we forgive you. We forgive you. Crazy Bunny, Craig Campbell is smashing it. Long walk when leaving kids alone. No way would I have done that with my kids, said Angie Mack. I suppose if you live in a stately home, the garden might be that big, said Kennedy. Yes, the problem is they don't live in a stately home. They live in a kind of basic home in Leicester, in Rothley, because I've been there. I've been to their house and I've seen their back garden. And that walk is nothing like being in your back garden. Nothing at all. So, not in the chat much, says Shalini. Are you working, Shalini? The more likely you are in getting her back. What's that? What's that, Helen? Talk to me. They must have a big house if it was like the back garden, but it wasn't, DJ. That's the thing. It was all misleading. They were trying to mislead us. So very simple. And that is Operation Grange there must be no more financing or funding for Operation Grange. It must end, and we must have full transparency about what has happened, all of the people involved in continuing to fund it from the British Home Office. We need to know more. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. What's this? Hello, Short Order Cook. Hello, lovely mods, says Short Order. Hi, everyone. We've got the friendliest, chattiest people in the live chat, haven't we? And it's Paul Cardin here. Good morning, Paul. Paul has been fact-checking the British Prime Minister. Now, Paul, to my understanding, because if I remember correctly, I interviewed Paul once about him actually being involved in the Falklands. He's written a book about it, Return to Bomb Alley. And Paul seemed to catch out, allegedly, Keir Starmer doing one of his kind of, dare we say lies? Lies. But apparently at Prime Minister's question time on Wednesday, Keir Starmer seemed to allude to the fact that his uncle's frigate was hit by torpedoes and sunk during the Falklands War. And Paul has fact-checked this. And said, based on the provided search results, Keir Starmer's name is associated with 2 instances of torpedoes. And that was that his uncle was a British frigate, was hit by torpedoes. And apparently Starmer said something during PMQs on Wednesday, 9th of October, and the bots must have taken it to be genuine. Anyway, the bottom line is this, is that Paul says that is not true. That did not happen. And he knows because he was there. There was actually... let me just read some of these comments that Paul has sent to me. At PMQs today, Starmer asserted his uncle was torpedoed and nearly died in the Falklands. As far as I know, the only ship that was torpedoed was the General Belgrano. Our ships were hit by missiles or bombs. Am I correct? Was Starmer's uncle Argentinian? Or is this another lie? I think it might be another pork pie. More pork pies, Jasmine. More pork pies. I fact-checked Starmer. And he is a... Una is using a word which begins with W and ends with anchor. I think I agree with Honor on a plane. Torpedoes, that's what Labour will do to the UK economy, says Craig Somerset Squirrel. Indeed. Thank you for that, Paul Cardin, for fact-checking this awful, awful man. Now, before I bring in our first guest, I want to show you another clip. This clip was from Wednesday, March the 19th, 2014. 10 years ago, a decade ago. And this was literally our next guest. Let me just see if our next guest has arrived yet, because I just have to. Yes, he's here. He's actually waving to me from the green room, which is wonderful. And so let me just tell you about this, because I think this really tells you the mark of someone when they're prepared to stick at something for so long. And this is the reason I wanted to show this clip. So on Wednesday, March the 19th, 2014, outside the British Parliament, it was budget day a decade ago. And I interviewed Justin Walker, who was leading the campaign for the Bradbury pound. And he had come to talk about the Bradbury pound outside Parliament then. And he's come today onto our show to also talk about the Bradbury pound. But let's have a look at Justin in action outside Parliament 10 years ago.
The lair, if you like, of the criminal bankers and the politicians who have sold their souls to the criminal bankers. And we know they are criminal bankers because they can create money out of thin air, charge interest, and when they transfer that nothingness across to the Treasury, we, the taxpayers, have to find £50 billion a year to pay the interest on something that never existed in the first place.
Indeed. And he's absolutely spot on right, of course, absolutely spot on right, which is why he's here today, and he's going to be joining us any second now. Here he is. Good morning, Justin Walker.
Well, good morning, Sonia. I was looking at myself. I was going grey then, but I'm very grey now. I can't believe it is 10 years ago, but you're absolutely right. The main thing is we are carrying on, and the Bradbury pound is starting to gain momentum. So I'm very happy with things. Should I explain what a Bradbury is? Because
you should. Let me give a little bit of background first of all, though, because I think it's really important. You are, of course, the campaign director of the Bradbury pound, as we've just seen. You've been at this for a very, very long time, which I think more power to your elbow, frankly, Justin. You just sent out a challenge to Rachel Reeves. She has now less than 28 days and counting, actually. And you sent her this challenge prior to the autumn budget. It's an open letter. She is, of course, the Chancellor of the Exchequer. And they've been making lots of noises about all the horrendous things that they're going to be doing to us. But so importantly, they also talk about this, I believe it's a 22 billion black hole. And that is what you're addressing. So first and foremost, Justin, absolute pleasure to have you back again. Thank you for keeping at this for so long. Tell everybody what the Bradbury pound is.
Right. Well, first of all, here is a Bradbury pound. And this is the third edition of it. It came out in 1914 at the outbreak of the First World War. Why did it come out? Well, we were on the gold standard then. And to put it bluntly, when there's a global war announced, people look at their pieces of paper from the Bank of England and think, I'm not going to trust this. I would rather go back to the bank After all, it says on the notes, I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of. I want my gold. I want a piece of gold. And, you know, we've got to remember a £5 note, £1 in 1914 was probably equivalent to around £160, thanks to inflation. And of course, inflation, of course, is all part of the system that we're having to endure. So people thought, right, I want my gold because I know that gold will go up when there's a war, whereas paper money could easily just disappear in value. So they all started queuing up outside the Bank of England and the high street banks. And this was on about August we declared war on August the 4th, but in fact the panic started before then. And David Lloyd George was the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and the Governor of the Bank of England and other bigwigs from the City of London, other grandees from the City of London, went running around to Number 11, the Chancellor's house, and said, "Excuse me, we need action because otherwise we're going to have a complete collapse of the British economy." And oh dear. So David Lloyd George rushed a bill through Parliament, the Currency and Notes Act. And within 2 days, August the 7th was the day when the Bradbury pound, and as I said, that's the third edition. The first edition was printed on one side only. It had a 10-shilling note and they had the £1 note, and it was printed on stamp paper. That's how quick and how panicky things were. And when people had it explained to them, and this is the key now to everything, the fiscal process they were using, and it's not complicated, so please, I'm not an economist, so anyone can understand this. The fiscal process being used was M for monetary, M naught. Now we're still using M naught today, and that's the coins in your pocket, your £2, the £1, the 50p, the 20p, etc., etc., etc. These are created by the Treasury. Using the Royal Mint, these are used by the Treasury. They are debt-free and interest-free, unlike the notes from the Bank of England, which of course are debt-bearing and interest-bearing. So the coins in your pocket are debt-free and interest-free because they are based on the wealth and creativity of the nation. And currently the nation is worth around £40 trillion, according to the Office of National Statistics. And you just simply put a tiny percentage of that into liquidity to base your currency on. It's very simple indeed. So going back to 1914, yes, everyone had it explained to them what this money was, and everyone said, yeah, okay, we'll buy that. If this is coming, if this represents the government and our nation's wealth, we accept those because they are stable and it ain't going anywhere. Whereas the notes from the private Bank of England, we don't trust. So literally, a financial disaster was averted and everyone went away happy, except the bankers. Yes, they had been saved, but they then went running back to David Lloyd George and said, look, okay, you've saved us. We did wrong-foot ourselves. And by the way, this is one of the rare occasions when the banks genuinely wrong-footed themselves. So the bankers went running around to David Lloyd George and said, look, we can't make a killing out of the killing. Come on, you can't just win the war by using a part of the nation's wealth to pay for it. You can't do that. We've now got to go back to the usual process of you offering gilts and bonds. We, the private financial sector, buy those up, and at 3%, 3.5% interest, whatever, and let you borrow money so we gain from the war, we gain the interest. And of course, David Lloyd George caved in completely. I have my own reasons for why I believe that he did that, but that's another story. But the point was, the bankers got back in on the act. And whilst the Bradbury pound continued in some form, and in fact, the last one was issued in about 1926, the point is, well, I'll just give you an example. The national debt at the beginning of the First World War in 1914 was £650 million. When the Treaty of Versailles in 1919, which formally brought the First World War to a finish, the debt had gone up to 7,500 million, 7.5 billion. Bear in mind, a pound today pound then today is worth about 160. So you see, the bankers made a complete killing out of the
Right.
killing.
So is that what we're dealing with here? Is because everything I've looked into the Bradbury pound over a long period of time. You've given me so much information over a long period of time. I've even given it to MPs. I'm actually going to show one MP after I finish talking to you who I gave it to and his reaction. There is such a reluctance to adopt any understanding about it within. So is it about the power of the bankers to push fiat currency as opposed to Bradbury?
It's the whole thing. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I found out, I don't know if your viewers have come across a chap, and I've written it down here. He's a gentleman by the name of Markcuson, and he does fantastic videos on the Second World War and sometimes the First World War. And he is extremely well thought of. He's got 2.2 million subscribers, and he's a real historian. Now, he did a video put out day before yesterday, and absolute brilliant timing with my letter to the Chancellor. And it was entitled Himmler's Fourth Reich SS Assets Saved in Global Conspiracy. And what he does partway through the video is highlight a bank which nobody has ever heard of called the Bank for International Settlements. And I've asked around 20 MPs, have you ever heard of the Bank for International Settlements? No. It was set up by Montague Norman, the British governor. He was the governor of the Bank of England, the longest serving, in 1930, and he set it up with his good friend Helmer Schlacht, who then became Hitler's finance minister. And the BIS was meant to look after German war operations after the First World War, but very quickly morphed itself into becoming the central bank for all the central banks. So in fact, it controls the Bank of England, the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, and all the top banks, the Bank of Russia, the Bank of Japan, the Bank of China, etc., etc. And of course, in turn, the Bank for International Settlements, as confirmed by the historian Carol Quigley, is controlled by the big banking dynasties and the Warburgs, the Schieffs.
Exactly. And actually, the Bank of International Settlements is a huge part or a significant part of your letter to Rachel Reeves. So let's have a look at that, because you tell her immediately you are now faced with a truly massive dilemma. What is that dilemma?
Well, the dilemma is very simple. With just one simple sentence, by saying that we are now literally restoring our economy to the wealth of the nation. In other words, we will pay for all our essential services, NHS, education, defense, whatever, services, our infrastructure, our transport infrastructure, whatever it is, energy, whatever, and our essential strategic industries like British Steel, which is now completely collapsing. We would use a part of the nation's wealth to underpin the services, the infrastructure, and the industries, so that you don't need to worry. And you don't even need to worry about direct taxation. Let's look at taxation. Taxation is invasive and it's complex, and it's there to control you. And it also gives the raison d'etre to our political class, because they're in Parliament usually discussing how much they're going to tax us.
Yes.
And this is what the budget is all about. And the budget they're telling us is going to be a bad budget.
Oh, they really are.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a pensioner and they've taken my 300 quid off me.
Yes, mate.
Yeah, they've declared war on me, I can tell you. But no, seriously, everything could change, because that 22 billion black hole that she's worrying about, that's just the interest on our national debt for 3 months. That is, and the national debt, that came about in 1694 when they established the Bank of England. That should never have been, because quite simply, you can harness this idea of the nation's wealth. You create into liquidity enough to create the money needed to look after the prosperity and the happiness of the nation. But as I said, we do it already with the coins in our pocket.
I mean, the thing is, I think the thing is, though, the reason I used that particular clip of you from 10 years ago is I think there, in that little nugget, you hit the nail on the head. And that is, we are dealing with a deceptive, deceitful monetary system. In fact, you outline that absolutely to Rachel Reeves. You say, Chancellor, with your recent acceptance to take charge of the running of HM Treasury, you now find yourself at the very heart of what can only be described as a fraudulent and quite deliberate monetary deception on an almost unimaginable scale, the detailed verification of which is given in this open letter. And you set out a charge sheet. Talk to people about the charge sheet.
Well, I mean, where do you begin?
I know.
It is so huge. And predecessors, her predecessors have all been involved. George Osborne, you name them. They've all been at it because they're all in bed with the City of London. I mean, for instance, how many people watching this program today know that there's a gentleman sitting there in the House of Commons called the City Remembrancer?
Oh,
now the City Remembrancer, he's been there, well, not him, Mr. Paul Double was there for 20 years. He's no longer, he left this year, and another Paul Wright, has now taken over. And he has the right to go and sit amongst our MPs to make sure in the chamber that the City of London and all its privileges are never, ever questioned.
right.
Now, I'm going to give you a very interesting, one of the questions I raised to dear old Rachel Reeves, or some wit told me the other day, Rachel Thieves, which I thought was rather nice.
Oh, we like that.
Yes, I think so too.
That's not too defamatory, is it? We like that.
I know. I wish I could. I'd give the highlight the person who said that to me. But anyway, the point is, the City Remembrancer is there making sure that nobody rocks the boat. Now, how about this? Professor Richard Werner. Now, he is a German economist, and he's one of the most influential economists in the world, living economist in the world today. And he actually came up with the, what's the term? I can't remember the term now. It's just gone out of I knew my senior moments would hit me sooner.
Well, it happens to us all. I wouldn't worry.
Yeah. But he came up with the idea of when the banks start creating lots and lots of money. But anyway, the point is, on a program on Russia Today, do you remember that program we're not allowed to watch for fear?
I remember it well. I contributed repeatedly to Russia Today. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, on a program about 8 years ago, he actually said to another friend of his who's a commentator in the City of London, the City of London is a foreign country. It's a foreign country within our own country. So, this is Professor Richard Werner, top economist, stating what we all know, because the monarch, we used to see pictures of the Queen on formal occasions touching the sword of the City of London, to be allowed to go ceremonially into the City of London, because effectively the City of London is saying, we are a sovereign country. Our square mile is sovereign, different to your country. You have to ask permission to come in. Now, the Bank of England is situated in that square mile. So we have an alien country within, I would call it a cancer cell, within our country. And the Bank of England is situated there. But the Bank of England is supposed to be under the remit of the HM Treasury. However, the governor of the Bank of England Andrew Bailey at the moment, goes charging off to Basel in Switzerland to meetings of the Bank for International Settlements, where they have meetings every, I'm just seeing if I can find my book. I had a book here, which I would recommend. I bet I've not, here it is. I would recommend people to read this book. Tremendous stuff. The Tower of Basel, by a gentleman called Adam Libor. Now, he covers the Bank for International Settlements more in its early days and joined the war. And that's going back to that chat program, that Mark Felton's program. And but they go and have meetings every 2 months where the top 12 governors and others meet, and there are no minutes taken. There's literally, it is all done within this lovely room, and they wine and dine themselves. And
actually shocking.
The whole thing is absolutely secret. So when Andrew Bailey comes back from these meetings every 7-8 weeks, Does he go to the Chancellor to inform her what was agreed? Because these people effectively control how much or how little money the world has to spend. Why do you think we've got a third world? Because there isn't enough money in the world. Why do you think? I mean, it is quite appalling when you think.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's a horribly unjust and unbalanced world. There's no doubt about it. People are also pointing out that's why we have a City of London police too. Obviously, they're like a separate country in their own right. Absolutely. So here's the thing, though: is what responsibility or obligation does Rachel Reeves have to responding to you?
Well, she has total responsibility because, like she says, my servant in Parliament. She's your servant in Parliament. We've got to get these wretched politicians to wake up to who they really are. They are our servants. Now, we have had this political, I'm straying a little bit from what I'm talking about, but political parties, career politicians, one of the things I make very plain in that letter is that if we go back to sovereign money, and this is the key, real debt-free, interest-free sovereign money created by the nation, for the nation, total stability, would you trust such power to be given to the MPs that we have, the self-serving, the political parties, they're always being lobbied, having free gifts given to them? You know, I mean, when you look at the standard,
it's obscene
of these MPs, they're obscene. And there's no way on God's earth that I would agree to have the power of the Bradbury and 2024 Bradbury given to these people. They are not fit for purpose. And in fact,
So, Justin, we could absolutely start the Bradbury pound tomorrow with the right political will, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing that could prevent us doing that. We could go ahead and use that, and that could become our currency. But the problem, of course, is that they would see that as going backwards because they're heading towards a central bank digital currency. They definitely don't want a Bradbury pound. Yeah,
it's absolutely right. And of course, all we have to do is go to China to see what the future is for us. And, you know, this we're talking here of the Chinese Communist Party. They have created a central bank digital currency. Well, shall we say the Bank for International Settlements was heavily involved with all that. But they've also got a social credit system. And it means with their cutting edge surveillance cameras and monitoring equipment, whether you're in your workplace, on the streets or in the home, artificial intelligence controlled by the Communist Party knows exactly what you're doing, where you're doing it, what you're doing. And they also know what you buy. Now, with all this ridiculous rubbish about climate change and man-made global warming and all this, and we're all got carbon credits. And let's notice that the top man behind the UN Secretary General, who goes on about global boiling, I've never seen such appalling science. And I used to be a friend of David Bellamy, the late Professor David Bellamy. And I can remember being in his kitchen just a few days after he'd been let go by the BBC, filling up his
because he spoke out.
And he had tears in his eyes. And he said, Justin, it's all bad science, Justin, bad science.
Yes.
And the man was so upset. Now, I knew by then, because it was all bad science and everything else. But the enforcer, one of the key enforcers to make sure that big industry toes the net zero line is none other than Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of England before Andrew Bailey took over. I'm sorry. It is riddled with corruption.
It is riddled with corruption. And I think if nothing else is achieved from your letter, what it is a very thorough document which actually exposes the corruption. And I think the more people that know about that, the better. So, Justin, I take it you haven't heard anything back yet from Rachel.
No. Well, what I want to ask you, I want every one of your viewers.
Yes.
Now, I've got a task for you all. Now you can. Will you have the link to the letter on your?
I absolutely will. We will put that in the description. Oh yes, we will.
And I'll also just read out the website where it's held, where the host website.
Yes.
And thegreatrising.org, but it's great-rising.org, and you'll see action this day. There's an elephant in Gaza. That's something about what situation in Gaza and about the truth behind what's really going on there. But then you've got the elephant in Westminster, and of course the elephant is the Bradbury pound. And if you go on there, you'll get the PDF. Now, what I want you to do, please, all of you, is to send that link to your MP and to ask them to send that letter. As after all, you require them to. You don't ask them, you require them to.
Yes.
Because they are your servants. Don't forget.
Yes, they work for us.
My MP, Tim Farron, and I've been pestering him for 12 years, and I moved away, came back, and I'm back now where I'm living in Cumbria, and I actually got him to agree yesterday. He's sending my letter to the Chancellor,
and that's what we need,
with a request that the 4 specific questions that I pose at the end, she answers in full, because those 4 questions will absolutely show and expose the whole financial scam that is running our lives today.
They are loving. You have to read the comments in the live chat when you finished on here. People are loving this. Short order cook points out, I require you. Sounds good to me. Absolutely. I require you.
Always keep it polite. Never,
yes.
Because they would love to call you vexatious, and that's their excuse to walk away. If you're polite but firm, they cannot run away. They cannot.
Yes, MPs are owned, said KB. But the point is even if they're owned and all those things, we know this about them, still send it to your MP, because it kind of puts them on notice. Right? It puts them on notice, and it's important. Really, it is. Justin, thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you for keeping
at this. Can I just come back with one thing, which I think
you can.
Important. And that is, you remember I was mentioning we wouldn't trust MPs with this or anything. What we need is to go back to our history and the Anglo-Saxons, and the king, a monarch, had a wit arm. Wise people. Now, we all know there are plenty of good people in our country who want to serve, who are wise, who have integrity, who have humility, and who do not want to be a part of some sort of gravy train. They're not. We know there are people like that, and we need to elect a new witan, a treasury witan, separate to Parliament, which would be around about 100 people, and those people would direct how the wealth of our nation would be used for the good of everybody.
We love that. What a wonderful parting shot. Thank you so much. People very much have enjoyed this conversation. I think because
it was lovely to see you again. I mean,
lovely to see you. We'll keep bumping into each other every 10 years.
We will indeed. And
until you've sorted this out.
I'm only going to, I don't know when Mr. Reaper will call on and take me out, but I am not giving up until this thing is done, because I was told this by my uncle. Well, people don't know, but my uncle was a director of the Bank of England for 17 years. He was another director on his deathbed who got his son to ring me. He told me about the Bradbury. I'm not an economist. I'm not a genius, but I worked it out very quickly from that tip off. And then you saw suppressed history. The whole thing has been airbrushed.
Yeah.
So, there we go.
Lovely comment. Short Order Cook says, thank you, Justin, for the wake-up call. Shell's Show says, thank you. Jasmine says, wonderful guest. And on and on. Yes, thank you, Justin. Much appreciated.
Well, thank you, Sonia, for having me.
Thank you,
very
Thomas.
Much.
Thomas says thank you as well. In fact, they're all saying thank you. We're all saying thank you. Everybody, this is Justin Walker, campaign director of the Bradbury Pound.
Well, it's the Great Rising. We call it the Great Rising now.
The Great Rising. Good morning,
I'm
Grand
not a campaign
Rising.
director. I'm a co-founder. I'm just a pensioner now who's lost his 300 quid.
You are far from just anything. Absolutely.
I want my 300.
Other
I want my
than
300
Justin.
quid back.
He wants his money back. Take good care of yourself, everybody.
And you, Sonia.
Brilliant, Justin Walker. Take good care of yourself.
Bye-bye.
Lovely to have you with us. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Lovely. Isn't he a lively creation? He really is. And does anybody want to see what happened when I attempted to give Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London, the Bradbury Pound literature? I'm going to show you anyway, because I can't help it. And this was, I should say, this was 10 years ago. This was literally in I doorstepped Sadiq Khan twice. Once on the day that I actually talked to Justin, but this what I'm going to show you now is the week following it, because Sadiq Khan had been really rude to me on the first occasion and just was like, oh, I don't know anything about the Bradbury Pound, sounds rubbish to me, all this kind of stuff. So on the second week, I went back with literature for him. So this is the moment. You want to see it, Shell? You want to see it? Go on then, says KB. Now, bear in mind, I could be quite fiery when I'm doorstepping, right? So, bit of choice language here. Ready? Are you ready? Right. Let's play it for you.
I thought it was.
I mentioned this to you last week about zero interest money. No, you really need to take it. We pay for by the British public, though. Yeah,
that's what we're going to do.
you can't keep doing this, Diddy. You have to start answering some real questions instead of keep appearing at protests like a prostitute. Okay, you've got to answer some real questions that affect real people. Okay. Now the truth is, the Bank of England can print money at will, which you were very facetious about last week, and this is the Bradbury pound, which the Treasury can issue at zero interest, zero debt. Are you going to take it? This is Sadiq Khan. He is refusing to take this leaflet on the Bradbury pound. That should tell you everything you need to know. There you go. Did you see when he kind of holds his head like this? Like, can somebody get this mad, crazy woman away from me? Stephen, I cannot stand what goes on. I think one of our chatters really accurately said they're compromised. Brilliant word. I cannot stand how compromised these people are. Sugar, can't help myself. I'm a troublemaker. Even 10 years ago, he was listening, Thomas. Oh, yes, he was. Oh, yes, he was. Oh, yes, he was. Right. Do we have time for an update in anything else before I bring in my next guest? No, actually, let me just, I wonder, bear with me, people. Bear with me. No, that's going to be too long. I want to do that afterwards, all about that. Have I got time to read a viewer email? I have, from Bex. I'm going to read Bex's email. I hope this email finds you well. I want to reach out and say how much I respect your work. Thanks, Bex. I found you through the Madeleine McCann saga. I remember when the story broke and thinking it was off at the time. It kind of reminded me of the woman who killed her husband but tried to make out it was a road rage driver. Do you remember? Yeah. What wasn't that? Tracy, was that Tracy Andrews? I'm sure people in the comments will remember. And at the time, there was press rumors of a swingers group with the kind of McCann group. And although I believe that, I think the truth is much darker. And Bex goes into it, which I can't for reasons of libel. And but I absolutely hear what you're saying, Bex. And Bex also wants to talk about the weather topic on Monday's show. Was so confirming for me for years now. I've been saying the sun's rays feel different. And take today and yesterday. Have you known flash floods and downpours in the UK followed by intense sunshine immediately after? I have not. And the Bex also wants to comment on Puffy. I could go on about Puffy, but you were busy. All I will say is it's a little obvious the arrest was staged. Puffy has been in the media for 12 months about his attitude towards women, and he has more than likely been aware of an investigation for years pre that. Yes. Why would you leave videos in your home to be seized? You could have moved them elsewhere a long time ago. I mean, all of that's quite interesting because obviously there was the grand jury, and yet all of that stuff was left there, which we're going to go into more detail after our next guest. But I think Puffy believed he was going to be name dropping, but I don't think it's going to be anything like that. Far too many big names involved. Puffy will disappear and it will boil down to something similar to Epstein. Just wait, Netflix will drop something in 6 months. Bex already has the whole roadmap planned out. You know why? Because these people are we literally know what they're going to do next, don't we? Yes. Can you activate the subtitle, Sonia, for those that can't hear? Dave B. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do that. And that I think you can't you do that from your end? Yes, you can. On YouTube, you can do that from your end. It'll actually give you a way to do that. Yes. What's Shug saying? If you take a step back and take an overview of the world, there is one common theme. People are being killed en masse all over the world. It's time we woke up. It is time we woke up. And you know how we're going to do that?
Sonia Poulton, Sonia Poulton.
We're going to do it.
Good morning, rising. It's time to wake up. Sonia.
It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. We're going to do it by waking up, people. Yes, we are. We need to. Sally says there are no subtitles available. There has to be. How can there not be subtitles available on your YouTube? I will have to look into that afterwards. It may be something that we need to initiate from here. So I apologize if you're struggling this morning. I really do apologize for that. Sunlit, how are you? Mr. Mensa is talking about Nicola Bulley. I'm going to be bringing on somebody, not today, but I'm going to be bringing on somebody who's done extensive deep dive into the whole Nicola Bulley investigation. But just to say thank you, Bex, for your lovely email. I love that. Everybody, because people, you know, the stuff that we cover on here, obviously we cover news stories, we cover crime, we cover so-called conspiracy theories. We, you know, viewer engagement is huge to me. It's so important. And I love it. I do love it. Right. I've got time to read this. Beverly Macker left a comment after Monday's show where we talked about assisted dying and Esther Ranson. And Beverly said, when my dad was diagnosed with lung cancer, he was given 6 months to live by doctors. My dad had a good, positive frame of mind and lived another 5 years. When he did pass, it was at home, surrounded by his children. My sister and I nursed him. Towards the last few weeks, it was heartbreaking to see our dad deteriorate. He was not in pain, but knowing my dad, if it was available, he would have asked to be euthanized. Many times, he said he felt like a burden to us. He wasn't, but he was a good, proud man and felt helpless. During this time, we reassured and cherished him. My dad had a loving and caring family to support him. I'm concerned some vulnerable people would be coerced into asking to be euthanized to take the pressure off family members. It's a tough call. And it is, Beverly. And actually, that's a really important point, because I know for a fact that when I've had problems, like I had surgery, I started to feel a little bit of a burden to people around me. So I completely get your point there. And we don't need that situation, right? We don't need that situation at all. And KB would like to point out that Diddy didn't kill himself. We like to get that in first because you know how things run. You do know how things run, don't you, all people? Right, let me just check, see if our other guest has arrived yet. No, but I'm sure he'll be here soon. Right, this system is really interesting, by the way, and I'm getting to grips with it, aren't I? Flashing videos like there's no tomorrow. Yes, but I do have, I wonder if I can quickly, let me just check that he's not, he is here with us. I'm going to go to him and I'll come back with some other news stories after that. But thank you, Beverly, for that comment. Very much appreciated it. And so I am going to welcome in our next guest. And our next guest is here. Here he is. Hello, Michael. How are you?
Good morning, Sonia. Just getting my ears sorted, but I'm very good. Thank you. How are you?
Well, wonderful to have you with us. Michael O'Bernicia, or Bernicia, however you choose to pronounce it. How do you pronounce it, Michael?
Michael O'Bernicia.
O'Bernicia.
Yeah.
It's not even like any of the two that I just said. And this is why it's so important to get some feedback from people, how they pronounce their names. Michael, it's so lovely to have you here with us today. You have, of course, been on this, like our previous guest, Justin Walker, you've been doing this stuff for a very long time now, haven't you? You've been trying to make sense of the madness. We're living in tyranny, aren't we, Michael?
Yes. And I think that is actually the best place to start this conversation, because everyone I'm speaking to, everywhere I go in the country, and I've been traveling a lot of late, everywhere I'm going, people who would have maybe dismissed everything as just conspiracy theory nonsense a short while ago, because of the effect, in retrospect, of the whole COVID-19 situation, I think people are not only ready to believe the truth about what's really going on in the world, they are acutely aware, increasingly more people are acutely aware that the system is not broken because it can't be fixed. We need a new one. We need to start from scratch.
We do. And this whole idea, of course, if anybody's not familiar with Michael, he's been around forever. Well, in many respects, you were a comedian originally. You've done some stunning things, actually. You've set precedent, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But the thing is it annoys me, Michael, when people say they're so incompetent in government. No, they're not incompetent. It was set up to be this way, exactly what Michael has just said. And we need to get over that, don't we, Michael? The fact is that none of this happens by accident.
No, it doesn't. And I'm very glad to say that a number of years ago, myself and a few other people got together. We're talking about maybe 2006. We got together and we ascertained pretty much a summary of what the problems were and were likely to be over the next 15 to 20 years. And this is one of the things that I'm least happy about being correct about. What we predicted came true. Every single aspect of the tyranny that was planned long ago, they have enacted, albeit somewhat late in the case of COVID-19. But in essence, what we did in 2006 was we decided that because there were no remedies available within the justice system, that we had to find a way to make the common law and constitutional law work for us. We spent, and I'm talking about a hardcore group of activists, including myself, spent around about 7 to 10 years doing everything we could to try and make the remedies work within the justice system.
Right.
But no matter what we did, the only conclusion that was reasonable to draw, even though I still have a 100% track record within that completely corrupt and rigged system, the only way you can win is to be clever and play their rules within their system better than they can to enforce them into a position that they normally enforce us into. And that's a system which is bereft of justice.
It is. And I think it's really important. And one of the chatters is pointing out to me, Sonia, how did Michael's mortgage battle go? And now that is key, because this is where Michael was able to set precedent. Talk to people about your mortgage situation, Michael.
Okay, so in 2010, my father, who was trustee of our family property trust with my mother, which was holding at the time around about £3.5 million worth of property, which was almost bought outright in the family's property portfolio. Now, Bank of Scotland had entered into an unlawful contract with my family, unbeknownst to me initially, where they were charging 16.5% interest on a purported loan instead of 6.2%. Now, as a result of that fraud, my dad and the other trustees came to me and they asked me if I could help because no one seemed to understand how it came about. And when I looked into it, what I found was there was not one single valid legal mortgage over any of the properties. They all were void at law on the basis that A, there was no contract signed by both the bank and the borrower containing all of the terms and conditions. B, the deed was not witnessed when it was signed by the borrower by the actual witnesses who signed as witnesses. In other words, the witnesses witnessed illegally, and these were solicitors who witnessed it illegally after it was signed in a different place. In fact, later on, we managed to get one of those illegal witnesses to admit that they'd never met the people who they were witnessing the signatures of. But that was further down the line.
Scandalous. Go on.
Scandalous, yes. So, and the other aspect of the nature of the fraud that was front and center was the very fact that the bank could not prove that it had lent a penny of its own money to the trustees. So we simply asked them for the material evidence that A, there was an enforceable mortgage contract, B, there was a legal and valid mortgage deed, and C, that they could provide evidence that they'd lent a penny of their own money. And of course, I'm sure most of your listeners will already know, even if they haven't seen the film that me and Michael O'Dara made about it called The Great British Mortgage Swindle, which you can see at thegreatbritishmortgageswindle.net. Just search for the free version and you'll be able to see it at that site. Now, the fact is that this involved, by this point, by the time that we started making this argument, Michael O'Dara had already started making the argument that the year before in the county court. By the time I started doing it the following year, we built up a hardcore group of supporters who were willing to go out on the streets and to prevent unlawful evictions whenever necessary. And that also makes up a large part of the film. But in essence, when someone who knows nothing about mortgage law asks me, Michael, please explain in simple terms why you say every single UK mortgage registered at the land registry is illegal. Please explain simply. And this is what I say, Sonia. Almost always, except in the event that you are remortgaging your property, this is always the case. The bank's solicitors induce the mortgagors to grant a legal charge, otherwise known as a mortgage, over the property that they don't yet own before they have the right to grant that property, thereby vitiating the entire transaction as fraud. In other words, the solicitor who conveys the property to you unlawfully induces you into mortgage fraud by granting a charge over a property you don't yet own on the promise that the bank will then give you the money to buy it. If the bank was really giving you the money to buy it, they would give you it up front, and you would be bound by a lawfully binding contract that binds both parties with all the terms and conditions clearly set forth within it. That's never the case.
Let me just get this clear. What you're saying is every existing mortgage is likely to be fraudulent.
I'm telling you that we have put this argument to the Chief Land Registrar multiple times. And he agreed, albeit reluctantly, that there was not one single legal hole in all of the files full of evidence that we have put forward, proving that all 11.2 million mortgages registered at the land registry are illegal and void. And the only reason the land registrar would not grant us an application to strike them all out as such was because, in his words, we don't believe that any High Court judge is ever going to agree with you, even though you're right. So we're not going to take any legal position. We're just going to leave it there. In other words, they do not believe that a judge is going to allow the land registry to become automatically liable under their own rules for compensation to all the injured mortgagors who've had their mortgages fraudulently registered.
It's shocking stuff. So what was the outcome of your personal situation?
Well, in the personal situation, despite the fact that the unlawfulness of the case for most of the time that we spent fighting it resulted in 9 properties being fire sold at a fraction of their market value. So there were losses incurred before this happened. But the last 2 mortgages, the one over my sister's property and the one over my parents' property, were cancelled by the land registry on the basis that the land registrar at Durham, who was relatively new, and she came in, and the first thing on top of the pile on her desk was this case. And I managed to convince her, with the help of the assistant land registrar at Durham, I managed to convince her that every single one of the 11 mortgages that I'd originally applied to have cancelled should have been cancelled. And she wrote to me telling me that they would have been cancelled had we presented all of the evidence that we did in the final presentment at the beginning in 2011. In other words, none of those fire sales would have happened. The land registry agreed, so they cancelled the last 2 mortgages over my parents' and my sister's house. They weren't done at the same time, but they were done. So, and this was the first time it had ever happened.
Wow. And the reason why it's important to say that, not least because it answers Mr. Mensah's question, but the reason it's important to say that is because that background is informing where you're currently at now, right? And that's what's so important. That's what's led to the Treaty of Universal Community Trust, right? Talk to us about this.
Okay, these are great questions, by the way. Thank you.
Good. It's lovely to see you again, by the way, Michael. It really is lovely to see you again. Everybody's loving you in chat. It's absolutely great to have you with us. But yeah, what is the Treaty of Universal Community Trust?
Thank you very much. I am touched. It's great to be back. The universal. Okay, so where I need to start is when I was looking at the state of the world back in 2010. I started thinking about an idea that I'd had way back in the year 2000. And without going into the details about how this idea came about, I had a revelation in my life, which is probably a show in and of itself, but I had a major revelation where, even though I was producing films at the time, which I continued to do for a number of years until I got blacklisted, basically I had this compulsion to write something called A World Without Money.
Wow.
And this was basically because I saw how virtually everybody's problems were caused by money. And then the deeper that I looked into it, I saw that the actual cause was fraudulent money. And there would be something in taking a new assessment on whether or not money is intrinsically fraudulent, or can it actually be good? You know, can we demonstrate any good purpose for money in the world when the world is currently run with money in a way that rewards everyone who does wrong and generally punishes those who try to stop that wrongdoing in the world. And that's because that's another example of how tyrannous things are when we can't stop the wrongdoing in the world and we're good people and we get punished for it. But that's, again, another show. So what I did was I thought, well, what we need is a series of remedies. But to make sure those series of remedies work, we need our own jurisdiction. So I had a look. I started researching international law and convention and the law of indigenous nations and how sovereign independent nations are formed. And what I saw was that within their rules, it was possible for some people on these islands and elsewhere in the world to get together and form a pact to create a treaty under international law that would create our own jurisdiction. And that's exactly what I did with a number of other founding trustees. We created, first of all, a trust called Universal Community Trust. That trust appointed a number of trustees. On the summer solstice 2012, 52 founding trustees who were each part of new independent autonomous nations being founded that day on these islands got together and ratified the Treaty of Universal Community Trust, which I drafted with the following purposes in mind. We had 12 aims and objectives that we set forth, and these 12 aims and objectives, which can be read at universal-community-trust.org, and you just take a look and search for UCT Treaty. You should be able to find it easily. We created these 12 aims and objectives, which are basically a list of all the things that most of us on the front line fighting tyranny now agree need to be done. But we did this in 2012, when most people didn't think there was a need to do something like this. But those same people very often come up to us and thank us for having the foresight to put this together, because we really have built an infrastructure that is ready for people to fill. What we've created, Sonia, with that treaty is not just a jurisdiction that is government free. It is also tax exempt. It is also free from interference from the regulator. It is also a jurisdiction within which we can create our own currencies, our own financial systems, and our own marketplaces. And that's exactly what we've been building the infrastructure for. So for this to work, there has to be a way that we can allay the most common question that we're going to get on this subject. And it has been from the start. Michael, even if I agree with everything you're saying that needs to be done in the world, that we need a new banking system, that we need a new finance system, that we need to find a way of getting rid of corrupt government, how is this going to work without our own money?
Right.
And that is the critical question.
Go on.
So, to let you know, Sonia, I can't give up all of the information, but very soon it will become public knowledge. Despite major, and I mean major, operations to try and stop this happening for the best part of the last 12 years at least, we are in a position where UCT Treasury by the end of the year should be in a position to roll out the credit-based financial system, which removes fraud and usury from money creation and puts the power to create credit back in the hands of the people where it belongs. And it removes the very necessity to even have a bank in the middle of a transaction. In other words, this is the financial and banking revolution that is required so we can build with the credit that we create ourselves the new civilization that will make the old, crumbling, tyrannical one obsolete within a very short time.
How do we opt out of that old system, though? Because obviously the big problem we have is even when people do understand common law, as one example, they're still functioning in a system that doesn't acknowledge it, right? So how do we overcome that?
Are you saying how do we get people over the transition from one system to another?
Well, or how do we stop the dominant, oppressive culture and system and bring in our own? How do we go about that?
Well, put it this way. Even though there is no democratic solution within any political system, I'm sure most people listening to this do know that just isn't an option anymore. It's been set up to make us think that we have some kind of freedom to choose what happens to us. We don't. They choose it all, as Keir W.E.F. Starmer is already proven. Nevertheless, this is how we would incentivize everyone, because we know to get from a position of being under incredible stress, just having to pay the bills to exist, to feed your family, and not knowing where, you know, the next pay is coming from and all the rest of it. That is what keeps most people in a position where they can't do what they really need in their lives to make things better for them and their families. So what we are doing is, once UCT Treasury credit-based facilities are up and running, as I say, we expect that to happen by the end of the year. Once we're over the test period, we are going to offer the final, we're going to give to everybody what we believe will be the final straw that breaks the camel's back in that system. And that is, we're going to offer everybody whatever money they need to get through the next year, whatever it is they do for a living to earn money, whatever they earned or whatever they need to provide for their family over the next year. We're going to give everybody the means to create that credit in their own account that they can spend on a card in the usual way issued by UCT Treasury. And we're going to incentivize them, just transfer everything over to UCT jurisdiction. And you've got a whole year to find your true vocation and what you should do. You don't need to slave for a living anymore. This is literally the transition from paying tax and being a slave and feeling like you've never got any real choice, to not just choosing everything that you do with your life, but to create your own line of credit with the templates that UCT Treasury will be presenting to every single community member.
And it's important to point out that this is lawful, what you're talking about. This is a lawful solution, right?
This is 100% lawful. This has been checked, double checked, triple checked, etc. Not just by people within the legal professions and banking fraternity who support what we're doing. This has been checked by our enemies. This has been given to top QCs and then top KCs afterwards. And they've been asked to try and find a hole in what I'm putting forward. But the reason why they can't is because all of this has been created from the start using the rules that they use, that they don't want the people to benefit from. So all we're doing is, instead of allowing the banks to steal our credit, we are simply allowing the people to have the benefit of the credit that they create by their own hand.
Now, Michael, one of the reasons that you resonate with me is because we're both people who have big ideas about the world. And I think it's important to have big ideas. So my big ideas are things like, before I leave this mortal coil, I want to see Tony Blair held to account. I want the truth coming out about Madeleine McCann. All of those things, they're big ideas because obviously there's a lot of stuff behind these things, making sure that the status quo remains in place. And you are very similar to that. And there's nothing that I love that. I mean, it's big ideas that will ultimately change the world. But what is the difference between it being something that can practically happen and just wishful thinking?
The difference is that UCT already has, I believe the last count, 38 nations around the world, most of which are in Britain, yes, but they're right around the world. We also have another 160 sovereign nations from across the pond who are about to execute the UCT treaty, and we are looking at executing a treaty with them. And this is also attracting the attention of indigenous, sovereign, independent nations from around the world that we've been talking to for a good long while. Now, in terms of UCT Treasury, in terms of that being real, when I say it's going to be rolled out, it's not going to be rolled out on the internet. It's going to be rolled out in the banking establishment. We are talking about UCT Treasury acquiring a banking facility this year that will allow the rollout of the credit-based system. This banking facility will allow us to deposit what we already have in our possession. UCT Treasury is already in the possession of commercial paper in excess of £51 billion in value. And that £51 billion in value has been verified by notaries, by bankers, by lawyers, by barristers, and there is not one single fault with it. It is as good as the commercial paper that they use. What this will allow us to do, as I say, we're aiming for the end of the year for this to start, but it may be soon afterwards. We've been at this a long time, but we are right on the brink of pulling this off. UCT Bank via UCT Treasury will facilitate the creation of the people's credit that will pay for putting all the ills in the world right.
So let me get this straight then. So we're talking about creating a new monetary and financial system, right? Away from their so-called democratic system, right?
Correct.
So if we do that, how do we then engage with the system? For example, will our new monetary system be accepted by services, by shops, etc.?
Yes, you see, this is what we've created, Sonia. We've created a system which will work and function perfectly well without any problems in their system in order to facilitate the credit being sucked into the SWIFT system, for instance. And for anyone who doesn't know, the SWIFT system is what all deposits have to be cleared within for people in the West to be able to take money out the wall, to use their cards, etc., in the way that we do. So this UCT Treasury system, the credit-based system, is being set up to function within their system, but when, not if, their debt-based, fraudulent, Babylonian banking system of slavery, when it all falls away and becomes obsolete, as it will because of the credit-based currency, the credit-based system will be the only thing left standing, because it will be the only thing that isn't engaging, or the only financial institution worldwide that isn't engaging in usury and fraud. And that's why we've already got massive support worldwide for this initiative. This is why when I go and talk to bankers, and people might find it difficult to believe, but I talk to a lot of bankers these days. When I talk to bankers, they support what UCT stands for. They don't oppose it. They call Universal Community Trust the ultimate humanitarian project on the earth currently. And that's because we are looking to put everything right in one go under international law, but not by getting rid of the independent nation state, by protecting the right of nation states, or the rights of nation states, but also protecting the rights of the individual above those of the collective. So tyrannies like we've had to endure can't arise again.
It's very, I mean, it's really tricky, because for some people there is no way out, right? We're in a prison without bars, okay, and they see nothing that can resolve this situation. So when people like you come along, like anybody who's at the forefront of anything, they will be subject to, you know, people dismissing you, to ridicule. It's like, this can't possibly happen, you're being a fantasist. But and also, how could we guarantee that you won't turn out to be just like the original money lenders, the original bankers?
Well, firstly, to answer that last question, because I'm not, and it's plain that I'm not, and I wouldn't have lived the life that I've lived, which has been, to be honest with you, I've walked the path of most resistance for the best part of the last 25 years. I could have sold my soul long ago. I could have sold literally dozens of remedies for 5 to 15 to 25 grand a pop. I could have been a millionaire long ago if I'd sold my soul and agreed to keep my mouth shut about what I knew about what really happened on 9/11 and who organized it, etc., who financed it, how it all worked. Because that's where this started 3 days after 9/11, when I found out all that information. And anyone who goes back over the library of content that I've generated over the time that I've been blacklisted by the mainstream will see that there is nothing to compare it to. What I've done is create a series of remedies that work, and that wasn't possible before for anyone to say, because no remedies worked in the UK when I started creating them. And the fact is, when people say that this is impossible and it'll never happen and I'm a fantasist, well, they said exactly the same thing for years before I beat the banks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is an interesting comment I've just put on the screen. I wonder if you can respond to this. This won't work unless the breakaway society also has a military to back it up. What are your thoughts about that?
100% correct. A defense force needs to be formed, and we need to form a defense force for one reason. The people of this country have been under attack for a number of years already by government policy. They have tried to genocide or democide using the whole convict scam and a cocktail of midazolam and morphine and other drugs to kill people in hospitals, hospices, and the rest. And still nothing is being done. And yet I'm part of a team that put together all of the evidence that this was happening as a matter of government policy, which was suppressed in the courts to the point where They had gatekeepers at every turn trying to stop these allegations and evidence being made in a common law court. But we will not back down, even if that means that we have to create our own courts. But when the justice system falls like that, when the people are faced with the prospect of their government creating policies to kill them, that means we qualify under international law for assistance in rising up to defend ourselves. So that's why we have to have our own defense force.
Take your point. And what I just said, that comment about, you know, sometimes we can all feel overwhelmed as if we can't do anything. Shug is actually pointing out it's designed to be like that, Sonia, all part of making you feel small, weak and disempowered. And that's what I love about where you're coming from, Michael, is you don't feel any of those things, neither small, weak or disempowered. And what you're actually saying is very empowering. But sometimes when you're at the forefront of something, it is really scary to those who struggle to understand what it's all about. I will put, by the way, everybody, I will put in the description a link to an interview that Michael gave. Brilliant interview, which actually also discusses this, which I think is really worth a good look as well. And in answer to the question of people joining late, UCT stands for Universal Community Trust, and we're talking about the treaty of the Universal Community Trust. But yet, Michael, the whole system is designed to make us feel as if we can't do anything about it, isn't it?
Yes, but more so, it's designed to reduce the population of the Earth by at least 85% as well. And one of the reasons that they allowed us to have what they thought would be an innocuous freedom of information on the internet, the reason why they've had to censor people like us so violently the way they have, is because when they released the news that the internet was out there for people to use, they didn't for 1 minute expect that people like us would get together and do something practical that would oppose their plans. They thought that no one would find out what their plans were. But it turns out that not only did we find out what the plans were, we've been working collectively right across the earth to prevent these plans going forward. And when all of the lawful means at our disposal don't work, which is true everywhere, and we saw that during COVID everywhere, we need a solution that will work everywhere. And this, I get the goosebumps even before I say this, this is proof that this is the case, and that UCT, or Universal Community Trust, is an idea whose time has come. I was in London doing some stand-up comedy a year ago, and or a little over a year ago, and I was standing outside in the interval, and it was very hot, so I was cooling off, and because I was comparing the gig, and there was a couple of people who I didn't recognize came over and asked if they could speak to me, and I said, yes, of course you can. And it turned out that one was a founding trustee of the London UCT Nation, or Sovereign Community Trust as we call them, and she had brought with her a delegate from one of two African sovereign community trusts that had founded under Universal Community Trust because they wanted the protection of the UCT Treaty. And I'm getting a tear in my eye as I even think of what I'm going to tell you now, what she said. She shook my hand and she wouldn't let go of it, and she said, Michael Albanese, I want to thank you and everybody else in UCT for what you've done. We, my community, and our neighbouring community of friends, we took your templates in English and we translated them into our language, and we used them for the first time ever to get remedy against our local government, who literally for the first time has stopped their tyranny because they don't know how to answer your conditional acceptance processes and the UCT Treaty being international law. And we wanted to come and thank you personally, so I was sent to do that right now.
Love that.
Now that is why I created Universal Community Trust.
Absolutely, and we need that. Greg makes a good point, of course, though, and that is obviously the opposition that we'll get from it. As soon as they organise any form of defence force, they will be called domestic terrorists and shut down by the state. Of course, we have to prepare. The moment that you have a counterattack, you have to prepare for the dominant force, which has ruled for far too long, to have an issue with it and do everything they can to stop you. But that's not stopping you, is it?
No, well, we're not talking about rising up to violently oppose the system. No, we're not talking about doing that. We're talking about building a new civilization alongside their tyrannous one to make theirs obsolete over time, which will happen. Now, let's just put it this way, right? If UCT ran candidates, independent candidates, because we'll have the money to do it in every single one of the next election, in every single borough in the next election. If we did that, And we ran the candidates on one policy only. And that policy was, do you want to abolish taxation forever? How many people do you think would vote for it?
Oh, vast majority. Absolutely.
Do you think the vast majority would care about the rest of the policies?
Oh, do you think that would lead it? I mean, this, I take your point. I take your point.
Yeah. Right. So yes, that would not only lead it. So if they also found out that that UCT Treasury will give every new UCT community member the equivalent of a checkbook, which they can fill out to create their own credit in their new bank account or UCT Treasury account. If they could create their own credit and they didn't have to earn money to pay their bills, would that not alleviate every single anxiety that they have on a daily basis? Most of them.
I get you. Hearing shades of my ancestor, Thomas Paine, and all this. Very good. Bass driver, your ancestor was Thomas Paine. That's very interesting. Kennedy says, where can we find more about it? That it wants a simple explanation that can be passed on to friends. Sorry, I already got lost in the bit about mortgages. That's all right. That's the thing. When we're trying to get our heads around a new idea, it can take a few attempts at it. And that's why I'm going to post that video, because I think Michael also explains in greater detail and very simply, because I do think, Michael, that one of the things that you're capable of doing is making things very accessible, making very difficult situations very accessible. And I think you do that in the interview that you've done recently. Michael, hang on. Yes, it is. It is exactly Michael O'Byrnesia. Yes, it is, Shalini. Yes, it is. Do not be shocked. It's him, the very same. Yes, it is. Michael, what would you like to make sure that everybody hears you before you leave us this morning?
Well, I suppose the thing that I want to convey more than anything else is that no matter how much life bears down on you at times, no matter how much it seems like every good thing that needs to happen is just impossible because of how terrible everything around you seems. I know I meet so many people who are despairing like that. And I want you to know, I've been through my own despair. The system has tried to shut me down in a more violent and brutal way than most people listening can ever imagine. And when I tell that story, and I'm not able to for legal reasons currently, but when I tell that story, I will tell you a story that you will never forget, that will change the way things are done in this country and right around the world in relation to the way children are dealt with within the legal system and parents. The truth is, and this is the truth, they will tell you that the state is the final arbiter of who has rights over children. What I have managed to do is to prove at law that there is absolutely no way to beat the following argument, and that is God-given rights at conception are also known as superior guardianship rights at law, and those guardianship rights are granted by the Creator, not by government. So that means when the government tries to interfere in your life and in your children's lives, it will be, once the news becomes public, once the details can finally be released, it will become impossible for the state to overrule a parental decision, as they've been doing multiple times for so long.
We need more of that, very much more of that. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, Michael. We very much appreciate it. Thank you for staying a bit longer as well and explaining that. I will put links to Michael's work in the description, and you can find out more about the Universal Community Trust. Everybody, Michael O'Byrnesia. Lovely to have you with us, Michael. Take good care of yourself.
Thank you, Sonia. Lovely
Thank
to be
you.
here.
Thank you. You too. You too. And yeah, I am absolutely aware. Thank you. Maria says, great interview, Michael. I am absolutely aware that Michael has some critics in the comments, and why not? We all have to be subject to, well, a degree of criticism. What are we doing? Is it for the betterment of good of everybody? Is it for the good of everybody? I think I can take these off now. Hurts my head after a while. There we go. Right. Sorry, everybody. Let me just kind of get dressed in front of you, if you don't mind. Right. You're welcome, Shug. Shug very much enjoyed it. Big up for UCT, says Ian. Great interview. So, as I say, some people who are less than impressed. A non-user is not impressed. And that's fine. And Beyond Belief is not impressed either, but others are. And we don't necessarily need to be impressed as long as something can be done. we need to change we need to change the world as it stands, right? Because it's not okay. It's not okay. And if you have any suggestions of anybody you'd like to come on the stream and talk, as long as I've not discovered them to be a blatant liar, they'll be allowed on, right? And I've certainly not discovered that in Michael. Michael's attempted certain things, like I have, big things that don't necessarily come off. But I'm not here to tell you who is a goodie and who is a baddie. I'm simply here to talk to people on your behalf. And I hope that's okay. What remedy is there in these rigged courts? Says Beyond Belief. Well, I don't always find courts to be rigged. I have to say that my experience of litigation has been very positive. And which I know is not a usual thing for people to say, but it is. And I've been very fortunate. Right. Should we move on? Let us move on. I want to give you an update on what is happening. Oh, let me give you something to laugh about, first of all. We need something to laugh about, don't we? Well, it's not funny for the local residents. Are you ready for this, people? Let me just find where it is, because I think it's worth a good laugh, because I think we need a good laugh. We need a good laugh. I can't find it now, what I'm looking for, which is annoying. Oh, by the way, have you seen Disney's new trans character? Have we seen this? Have we all seen this? Trans character, trans-identified male called Sister. Of course. You know what to do, people, don't you? When it comes to Disney. Can't trust them. Catherine was reading about the subjects Michael brought up at least 5 years ago. Where can I see Michael's podcast about 9/11, please? Katie, I'll try and find it. Yeah, Nadia, he's not full of information. He's full of lies. That man, whose name I'm not even going to mention, claimed I was part of child trafficking. So no, I'm sorry. I have to disagree with you there, Nadia. Disney is a joke, Stephen. It really is. Yes. So that's what we're getting. That's what we're getting right there. Okay, I found it. You're going to like this. You're going to really like this. Trust me. You ready? You ready? Look at that. What does that look like to you? That is art in Naples, Italy, sent to us by the good monkey on X. Love monkey, lots. And wrote, so the art is in Naples, Italy. It's supposed to be a tribute to Gaetano Pesci, who was an Italian architect and designer who passed away in New York in April this year. It cost 157,000 euros and has been placed by the castle in Naples called Mascio Angioino. The title of the piece is, wait for this. The title of the piece is You Are a Big One, and will be on display until the 19th of December. And I'm reliably informed that the locals are horrified. No, Nadia, I've looked into the man's claims. They don't amount to a hill of beans. That's why he then started making videos about me, because I refused to interview him because he's an idiot. And it's very, very few people now who want to listen to him. So I'm surprised that you do. But hey, no accounting for taste. They worship their phallus, says MB. What an image, though, people. Would you be happy with paying for that as a taxpayer? I mean, who would? Because I certainly wouldn't. Let me have a look at the updates of Diddy, because he was in court yesterday. I thought that was very interesting. I was watching that. A good friend of mine. Let me just remove this phallus. A bit unfortunate when you say Diddy and you show a phallus, isn't it? I was watching it on a live stream directly from the court, because a friend of mine was filming outside and had copied me into this stream. It was like watching paint dry, because we were just waiting for people to come out. So basically, Diddy had showed up to this Manhattan court. It was all arranged, obviously. All his family arrived, his mum, his children. And it really wasn't so much about him wanting bail, because that's not really going to happen anyway. He's already been denied it twice. Third time they haven't really come back about it. It's not going to happen. But they set They set a date for the trial, May the 5th, 2025. And of course, he's facing charges for racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking. He's got loads of restrictions. He put up $50 million bond in an attempt to get bail, put up his mum's property, his property. Judge wasn't having it. And the judge wasn't having it just because he would be dangerous outside, but what he might do with potential witnesses, because he has a bit of a history. But I was looking at some of the people who were outside the court, and there was people with banisters, and one of them was "The night Puff tried to kill me," as one example. So a lot of people are showing up to it. But the judge is not really having any of the nonsense at all. Puffy is still absolutely insistent that he is innocent, that this will be proven. The big problem he's really dealing with is the sheer volume of witnesses, I'm told. The sheer volume of witnesses who have come forward. We know there are at least 120 civil claims against him. Now, I'm not suggesting that all of those claims are legitimate. I don't believe they all are. And the reason why I don't believe they all are is because I spent an awful lot of time around the music industry, and I know the kind of people who gravitate around the music industry. And this is something that I've talked about before. And a lot of people who gravitate around the music industry, they will do anything to get in with people like Puff Daddy. So some of those people will have been consensual, but there are an awful lot of victims. There are victims. And that's what he's having to deal with. We know there are definitely victims because the whole Cassie video, and his lawyers were arguing in court yesterday that the state had deliberately released the Cassie video of Sean Combs beating up his then girlfriend, that the state had deliberately released the Cassie video in order to push for the grand jury, which then created the indictment against Puffy, and that enabled him then to obviously be arrested, charged, and held. I think the whole thing is getting very interesting, because what we also found out yesterday is there is a suggestion. Remember what we said about those 1,500 bottles of baby oil? And we were like, we've said on here, I doubt that's baby oil. Well, it's looking increasingly likely, according to new allegations, a new claim that's going to be made against him, is that rather than it being baby oil in those bottles, it was some kind of sedative. And one of the new claims that is coming forward said that when she refused to strip for Puffy, he threatened her with a weapon, and then he threw this oil at her, and she said her body started to become increasingly limp as this oil was like making its way over her body. No, Jasmine, there's absolutely no way that he got away with this in isolation. None of these people ever do, whether it's R. Kelly or Weinstein or Epstein. They all have enablers. There's no doubt about it. My issue about the enablers is not least that they're enabling, but what it does, it allows people on the quote unquote lower rung to be picked up on this. And so I think what's going to happen is they'll go after Puffy's workers first, his assistant. And they'll go after his assistant and, the people who are organizing these hotel rooms and these so-called freak-offs, i.e. these crime scenes. I think that's what will happen. And we keep being teased that big names are going to be revealed soon, but excuse me, we shall see. I'm open to interviewing anybody, Kenneth, as long as they're interesting and they have something to say. What this week, Sean's mum, Janice, she issued a statement defending him. And obviously, as a mum, it must be heartbreaking to see your child dragged across the coals like this. But I'm sure she's benefited beautifully from the great successes of her son, oftentimes off the back of others. But Janice Combs said, "It is heartbreaking to see my son judged not for the truth, but for a narrative created out of lies. To bear witness what seems to be like a public lynching of my son before he has had the opportunity to prove his innocence is a pain too unbearable to put into words. Like every human being, my son deserves to have his day in court to finally share his side and to prove his innocence. I am not here to portray my son as perfect, because he is not. He has made mistakes in his past, as we all have." Indeed. And it's quite a long statement, much longer than I'm actually going to read because it's just too exhausting. Do we have GCHQ in the house? Beyond Belief seems to think we have. Anyway, it's obviously ongoing. We now have a trial date, March the 5th, 2025. That will benefit the defense more than the prosecutors. A quick trial is more beneficial to the defense generally. But it's highly likely that he will not be out for Christmas, that he will be inside, he will remain inside. until at least June, because the judge is actually saying like to cover the full trial, and that's going to go on for several weeks. It's also interesting that Puffy is actually in the prison cell with, let me remember his name, was it Sam Bankman-Fried? You remember who I'm talking about, right? Let me just find it. Oh yeah, that's right, Sam Bankman-Fried. Yeah, that's right. So that was remember the convicted crypto fraudster? Well, Puffy is being held with him in Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center. So I'm sure they'll have plenty to talk about. Curly Crew is late. How dare you? How old is Sean Combs' mum? Says B. She's actually 80, but she looks like she's just stepped out of a movie from the 70s, some kind of gangster's mole movie. I think his father was a bit of a gangster. That I know he likes to portray his father as like being a really good man and everything, but I think you'll find that when you look into the history of Sean Combs, his father was a bit of a gangster. So anyway, that's the update on that. But I think more interesting than that actually is the developments of what is happening around people talking about it. So for example, the Piers Morgan show Uncensored, it's been forced to censor its Jaguar Wright interview after lawyers for Jay-Z and Beyonce issued cease and desist correspondence. So the thing is, Piers Morgan works for Rupert Murdoch, and people are only going to sue you if you've got money, right? Or if they're just bloody minded, right? But for the most part, the reason that Jay-Z and Beyonce's lawyers stepped up to that is because obviously Rupert Murdoch is there to be sued. And actually, I have to say, it was a really irresponsible interview. And it's almost like Piers Morgan is playing some kind of game, which is enabling us all to be censored into the future. And here's the thing, is that Jaguar Wright, I know she's had lots to say about people, lots. I don't find all of it credible. But I believe what Damon Dash said, former partner of Jay-Z, and he said that she's kind of got most of this right. She was somebody who was a backing singer for Jay-Z. She's actually an excellent singer, but she never had the actual star quality of like a Beyonce. And I would imagine there's some anger in that as well, because you know it's like when you're talented, but you're not being promoted. And I don't think she was majorly speaking out back then to not be promoted. She was very much in with them all, but she's saying a lot of stuff now and not actually backing it up. And I thought that interview was in itself very irresponsible, because the least he should have done was when she was saying things like Beyonce and Jay-Z are more criminal than Puff Daddy and it's going to get even worse. He should have said, I know he said, well, they're not here to defend themselves. That's not actually enough, because she came with no backing, and that stuff is guaranteed to get you sued. Yes, Jasmine, Piers is all about government propaganda. Cease and desist from investigating perverts. Okay, says Beyond Belief. But the thing is that there's no conviction against Jay-Z and Beyonce. All we have is what's said on the internet about them. However, if you remember, a former employee of Beyonce actually testified in court that Beyonce was a witch and that they did a number of ritualistic stuff. So that I think is interesting. That I think is believable. Yes, Soul Sound, great voice, but no new style. I mean, that is the reality. And it's a hard business, because the thing is you have to be hitting on all points. Now, you may hate Beyonce, but she is absolutely at the top of her game. She's absolutely at the top of her game. The amount of work that she actually puts into her craft is phenomenal. And that woman can not only sing, she looks great, but she can also move great as well. She is a triple threat. And the reality is Jaguar Wright wasn't, but I still think that what she's saying, a lot of it is true. But I don't trust the combination of a Piers Morgan and a Jaguar Wright, because what that immediately does with Beyonce and Jay-Z sending out that correspondence is it has a chilling effect all across the rest of the internet and tells people to be quiet and be careful. Yes, Piers knows better than that. It seems he's going for sensationalist journalism in order to usher, see what I did there, in more censorship. Yes, I do worry about that. They couldn't succeed on the Murdoch platform as a TV. They moved him over to YouTube. And what is he heading up a whole new YouTube type of censorship? Because that's what worries me. Matt, I don't know about Matt Hancock and Michael. George, it's not so much that people watch Morgan, but when he has on guests like that, sensational guests like that, people will watch. That is reality. So I think that's interesting. Jay-Z and Beyonce's lawyers, very, very angry. It said Jaguar Wright unexpectedly. Oh, no, wait, let me see. Let me read you the quote. So obviously, Piers Morgan has now apologized. They've taken down and edited that interview, so it takes out those parts. And Beyonce and Jay-Z's attorney was absolutely furious and actually gave an interview to E! News and said that normally he just kind of ignores that Beyonce and Jay-Z ignored Jaguar Wright. They see her as being somebody who's kind of bitter and jealous and angry that she hasn't succeeded. And he said that what changed his mind is that somebody on a so-called journalistic platform exploited that kind of random rumor mill and lifted it up. And by doing that, they not only caused harm, but they are also drowning out the voices of real victims. And that is what concerns me, is that when we throw out allegations left, right, and center, and they're always sensational ones, aren't they? Jay-Z and Beyonce, huge. Don't get me wrong. I don't think these are great heroes or heroines in our lifetime. Not at all. What I'm saying is my concern is it overshadows everything else that is going on regarding the whole Puffy thing, which involves people who aren't necessarily famous. Oh, there's loads of famous people that were at these parties, but I'm talking about the people who were abused. They weren't famous and they deserve to be heard. And so those are my concerns. Beyond Belief is somebody who's having a bit of a meltdown in our live chat this morning. Do pull yourself together, Beyond Belief. You're looking slightly rattled. Shug wants to know, did you hear Musk's comments to Carlson midweek? It's already been scrubbed off the internet frantically. Wait, what was that about? I remember that. What was that about? Yes, Stephen, I did do a gatekeeper video on Piers Morgan, and I stick by it thoroughly, absolutely thoroughly. I want to bring back somebody soon to give me a full update on the Lucy Letby inquiry that's obviously taking place, Liverpool Town Hall, since September the 10th. But that case is falling apart. If you remember, the inquiry opened with Lady Thirlwell, who's running the inquiry, really calling out people who were asking questions about what was going on regarding the Lucy Letby convictions. And bear in mind, this is a former neonatal nurse who was convicted of the murder of 7 babies and convicted of the attempted murder of a further 7. Anyway, the whole inquiry seems to be falling apart, despite the fact that we were told it's wrong to ask questions, it's hurtful to the parents. Let me be clear here that whenever I ask questions about Lucy Letby, the last aim is to hurt any of the parents who have already lost their babies. The aim is to help them get truth and justice. Because there is no justice when there are lies. And there is every reason to believe that the Lucy Letby convictions are unsafe convictions. There is every reason to believe that. I'm just trying to find some of my notes about it because it's an absolute mess that's taking place. But as I say, the judge opened the inquiry, highly critical of those questioning the convictions. But as time has rolled by since September the 7th, it's become increasingly apparent why that noise was necessary. And we're hearing all manner of things, including issues with the Crown Prosecution Service burying, what am I saying here? Burying, oh goodness me, you know what I'm trying to say, hiding critical information. Statistical information. We've had statisticians on this show who say that it just simply doesn't add up from a statistical viewpoint. They used this list in which they kind of charted which nurses were on duty when babies died. And the inference from that was that Lucy was the common factor. Well, it turns out, no, that's not the case at all. That was the infamous chart. And as I say, statisticians have a lot of problems with that. And the CPS are coming out of this looking really bad indeed. The CPS not only pursued the original trial, but the retrial. And it would appear that they had information that could have made all the difference. George says, yes, I was having difficulty with the word burying. Absolutely. Thank you, Beyond Belief, for supplying the word for me. Got out of your meltdown now. That's great to hear. We love that. But truth and justice is everything inquiries are designed to quell, said Ray J. And honestly, that is the problem, isn't it, about official inquiries? You have to be so careful with them. But the Lucy Letby case is falling apart, people. They can't hold this together. Like, the inquiry is revealing such devastating information about the police inquiry, about the involvement of the CPS, about the doctors who came together against Lucy Letby. This is really bad stuff. And my mods are not happy about the amount of likes. They're not happy about it. 2,331 views. How many likes have we got, people? They're not happy about it. They want an improvement. Can I say, I'm somebody who understands exactly why there is a problem sometimes in liking. Sometimes you're not kind of logged into YouTube and you're just watching that way, and so you can't then like. But if you can like, it would be really appreciated. So we're going to do a more thorough update on Lucy Letby, because I know there's a number of people in the comments, a number of people who write to me about this case, and there's something really glaringly, obviously wrong, and we're going to need to do something about it. Toot sweet. Have I just lost something there? Right, no, I'm back with you. Question, yes, but don't disrespect. Humphrey, I take your point. These parents are heartbroken. They're heartbroken, and they've been told to focus all their energy and attention on one woman. And Ian said, no doubt it is sinister at that Chester hospital, Countess of Chester. What glitch did you just have there, Randy? Yes, Sonia, please keep Lucy at the forefront. So sad, poor girl, says Mr. Mac. Priscilla is telling me we've only got 329 likes, 335 now. Thank you for responding to that. We appreciate it. Now, I'm going to tell you something that is not going to be a shock to people around here, and that is harvest in England. We are now experiencing the second worst on record. And what we're being told is it's because of wet weather. Right, the actual harvest haul is down by 21% in Britain, with Britain's wine producers also hit hard. That's really problematic. To imagine that England has literally suffered its second worst harvest on record, and fears are already apparently growing for next year after heavy rain. And it's been extreme rain, hasn't it? What do we think about that? Do we think that is the universe? Do we think that's God, or whatever you think is the almighty thing that is guiding Mother Nature? Or has it had a hand? I would suggest, Mr. Mensa is already there. Mr. Mensa is not messing around. Oh, I only saw one bee this summer, said Jay. Yeah, that's pretty awful, isn't it? Mr. Mensa has this to say. And Mr. Mac has this to say: geoengineering and solo aerosol spraying. Jilly, we were expecting it, and this is the really worrying thing. This is really the worrying thing, indeed. These comments are going so fast now, and the thing is, they're already preparing us for next year. And obviously, if there's a problem with the crop haul, there will be a problem with food. I'm sure. Thank you, Heppelwyn. Absolutely. I'm sure that people in the comments earlier were talking about prepping. I think prepping is really vital. We must consider prepping always. And I think I told you before, I went to Arizona. I did prepping with a kind of world-renowned prepper, and he took me into the kind of Arizona desert, myself and two other people and his dog. And we caught a snake. I literally watched, well, we didn't, he did. But I literally watched him catch the snake. And actually, that was when I ate meat, and it tasted like chicken. Very nice. We had it over a barbecue. But I'm not suggesting that you start catching worms or snakes and frying them up or anything like that. But you can prep. He also had a can of chicken, which lasted for 21 years, right? Prep and try and grow as much as you can, says Peter. No matter how little. I agree. I'm going to make a vid about my veggie garden because 2025 will get worse, said Soul Sound. Soul Sound has an impressive veggie garden. So we do need to prep, because obviously the fact that this has happened this year, the fact that they're already telling us it's likely to happen next year is very, very concerning. And also what we're also being told, this is very worrying, we're getting into a situation where autumn planting is becoming unviable due to flooding, and spring planting is risky because of drought. Those are the official words. And that just, it concerns the life out of me. Look, we're getting the heads up now. We've brought a grow tent to finish off our chilies. Wait, what's going on? We brought a grow tent. Oh, let me just see. We brought a grow tent. God gave people care of their children. The government have no, I think that's right, to steal them. Yes, Nadia, you're absolutely right. Because this is going so fast, I'm clicking on the wrong ones. But you're right, Nadia. You're absolutely right. State should never get in the way of parent and children. Greg suggests that people should get themselves a couple of chickens, but not so sure in the current climate. Yeah, because make sure to register them. Look, they got us every way. This is why I understand that there is reluctance to accept new systems. But both my guests this morning are talking about new systems, and I do absolutely understand cynicism. I get it. I really do. But I'm just trying to show other ways, because we cannot stay in this system as it stands. We can't. Right, people, we're going to be rounding off shortly. Another 65 women allege abuse by Mohammed Al-Fayed. Mohammed Al-Fayed, of course, as I've reminded you before, was literally one of the last people who was responsible for the safety of Princess Diana before she died in a car crash in France in 1997. Mohammed Al-Fayed, extremely rich man, now dead. A BBC documentary covered it. We had Jo Britton on the other week. She was talking about her encounter when she was sent for a so-called job interview to be a nanny to Fayed's children, because she has that cut glass English accent from being at boarding school. Well, as I say, a further 65 women have now come forward to the BBC with allegations of abuse. Harrods have released a statement saying since the airing of the documentary so far, there are 200 plus individuals who are now in the Harrods process to settle claims directly with the business. That sounds like a proper show, doesn't it? What an absolute mess. And can I point out, really vital, this is not something we can discuss on here, unfortunately. Jeff Peel's been absolutely brilliant, a commentator. But Northern Ireland, of course, really important. Northern Ireland authorities are looking to be granted unprecedented powers in what they or the WHO define as a health emergency. And they want the ability to mandate vaccines. The consultation deadline ends on Tuesday. Now, please email your objections to phbt@health-ni.gov.uk. I will put that email address in the description. Please register your objections to what is going on in Northern Ireland. Absolutely damn outrageous. I'm running out of time this morning. I've got so many stories to cover. Some of these I can afford to keep until Monday, because it's already 5 minutes past 11, right? Let me just check I've covered everything that I felt I need to, right? Everything I need to. Yes, anything there? I was just, I've already done that. Let's have a look. Don't forget, when the world's backyard chickens weren't laying eggs for a time because of a change to the common feed. Nefarious, if you ask me, says John from Coventry. John from Coventry, is that John Streetlight from Coventry? I did not see that. Julia's posted about Save the Children being investigated for child trafficking. I didn't see that. It is absolutely terrifying what is happening in Northern Ireland, Stephen. Please, I implore anybody watching, please email your objections. That email address, I will put it in the comments. Just 5 minutes more, says Soul Sound. Can I please point out that our darling Soul Sound, our Shin, will be appearing on my other mod, lovely Zoe, Synchronized Souls, channel this evening. Shin is, of course, a very talented musician. Guys, would you like to put a link to the show in the chat? And I will also put it in the description. British, Ulster, Irish people, guinea pigs again for number 10 and the square mile, says Kenneth. Yes, please do repost it, Julie. Catherine says, my body, my choice is what I will be telling anyone coming near me with a needle. It's a perfect thing to put in an email, Kath. Perfect. What's this? They won't mandate them due to the risk of being sued. They'll stop people entering shops, uni, schools, travel, etc. without one, says Mrs. Pirate. That's exactly what they'll do. That's exactly what they'll do. I don't think they will ultimately mandate them, but they will mandate them to the degree that they will prevent people's movement. And that is a problem. What's this, Mrs. Hall? Wait! Hey, Sonia, my 14-year-old is listening and thinks you're great, like a breath of fresh air. We love you. Do you know what? It's really important to bring our young ones around. Hello, Junior Hall. Wonderful to have you with us. Thank you for being here today. Very much appreciate it. And if you ever fancy coming on and joining me and giving your perspective, your youth perspective, you'll be more than welcome. Contact me at my email address. Right. I'm going to move on to our last item, darling people, and that is about why being different is your superpower and mine too. The thing is, we are raised to conform, aren't we? It's the way our school system is set up. It's designed to make us compliant. And we've seen how that's worked over the last 4 years. But there are always people who stick out like a sore thumb. And I'm not just talking about people who are what they now call neurodivergent, either, ADHD or autism or Asperger's or any of those things. I'm just talking about people who don't conform to the status quo and don't want to either. And I'm one of those, right? And what happens is a lot of time throughout my life is there is a sense that you get penalized for not conforming. We've seen that again. Look, we're even talking about it in the comments. Mrs. Pirate's comment is a perfect example of it. But not conforming, I believe, is a superpower, right? Throughout my life, as I say, there is a sense that if I've refused to abide, to comply, to conform, then I will be penalized. And I've seen it in all areas, whether it's my work, other issues, actual relationships. But either way, I've arrived here at fabulously 60. And I've never felt more grateful to have been raised in a family which cherished our individual differences. The things that give us our superpower from an early age. As I say, we are told to conform. Yes, we are. To assimilate, to be like everyone else. And in fact, what often happens in primary schools, and I felt such an odd one out because I didn't ever get invited to the parties. Because I came from the Mad family. I came from the Poulton family in the village. My mum was a medium. My brother was a hippie. The whole family were hippies, really, which is kind of like the way I am. But we were the odd ones out in our village. But actually, as I got older, I realized that was our superpower. It's our superpower. And the thing is, when you recognize who you are and the superpower of being different, is that's when you will start to get the benefits of not only who you are, but you will take away power from the state, because the state wants you to forget who you are so that it can come in and take over everything. But it's really vital, even more now than ever in my lifetime, I feel. That might just be my awareness, but now more than ever, it's really vital to be different, to set yourself apart. We are easier to manage and manipulate if we align with everyone else. But I'm here to tell you that your individual different self is the best thing you can be. Please do not lose sight of your own uniqueness. It is literally your superpower. We all have a unique contribution to give this world, yet we often end up deferring to what other people want from us. I've talked before about kind of like in psychology where they have the looking glass theory, which is we take our sense of self from how other people see us. Sod that. And I can say that because I come from a family who made absolutely sure that my sense of self was rock solid. So I'm very fortunate in that respect, but not everybody comes from the same background. I appreciate that. Tell me what you think about your individual differences and the importance of being you. 11:11 says Jacqueline. We are here. We are at 11:11. And Randy said, it's so twisted. The ones you learn to hate are the ones shielding you. Yes. DJ Obsession says, we are all super black sheep. Don't you just love it? I love it. It's 11:11 p.m. in New Zealand, 11:11 a.m. in is it Northern Hemisphere, where we are now, and 11:11 p.m. in New Zealand. 12-hour difference, exactly. No one needs to be clone. Shine brightly in your own uniqueness, says Reba. I love that. Bye, Jeanne. You're only just catching the end, but at least you're here. And make sure you have a small mirror in your pocket at all times, says Cavan O'Brien. I think, do you know what, Cavan, I'm sure you've made a similar comment to that before, and I think there's really something in it. I really think there's something in it. Sometimes you just need to look at yourself, say, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm bringing to the world. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. So the thing is that it is not authentic living when you're living according to other people's rules. And I'm not talking about being antisocial in society. Of course, we have to conform to a certain degree, right? I can't go to get on a bus and hit everybody out the way and think that's okay. That's not okay. That's not the kind of not conforming I'm talking about. I'm talking about realizing yourself, being your whole true self. And because that's authentic living, and you deserve that. You deserve that. If you carry on following other people's ideas of how you should be, you will never, ever live up to your full potential, right? Even if you're on the hamster wheel of a 9 to 5, you can still be unique. Whatever spare time you have, craft time, what you want the world to know about you, whether it's dressmaking or pottery or video editing, do it. Whatever it is, make time to do it. This is your birthright. Please use it. You've been given these rights. Whether you believe in universal hand or a God-given right or whatever, you've been given these things. That's why we're all so beautifully unique. One of the truest statements on this, of course, it's a classic quote, which is be yourself because everyone else is already taken. And I love that. It sums it up really. So you have to believe in your heart that you have a purpose, that you're not an accident, because honestly, what it takes for a human being to be born is miraculous in its own right. It's an absolute obstacle course to be born. If it's not a miscarriage or an abortion or any of those things, it's a miracle that you are born at all. Cavan says, correct, Sonia, seeing a nice soul daily. Absolutely. Ian says, walk in the truth of who you are. You are not meant to be liked by everyone. Absolutely not. We're on our own until we unite, says George. Yes, we're all created with free will, says Vanessa. Rules are made to be broken, says DJ Obsession. I like the idea of learning rules and then break them and breaking them very cleverly. And who said that? I'll remember probably. Anyway, you've got to believe in your heart that you have a purpose because you're not an accident. Absolutely not. You are a wild card. Appreciate it, glory in it. It's your gift from God, the universe, whatever you want to believe in, or just believing in yourself that you are God. Whatever you want to call it, this has been given to you. So don't waste it. So yes, it is an absolute superpower, that you are your own unique self. And Crazy Bunny says, only 4 subs away from 1K on Synchronized Souls podcast. Can 4 people go sub, please? And I will love you forever. And she will. She will. And yes, Mama Bear, rules are absolutely made to be broken. Rules are made by people without the foresight that we have, right? And so I'm going to have to end there today, people. Thank you very much for being here. You are incredible. I love you so much. I like Marmite, says B. Marmite likes me. Not everyone likes Marmite or me, and that's exactly the way it should be. Beyond Belief said, self-belief is the only useful aspect of belief. Otherwise, have the courage to admit you don't know. Yep. Who knows? Who knows anything? Right? All we can do is hope for the best. But what I do know is that your unique self is your superpower. And I want to end on a quote. Thank you all, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Hoax. Thank you, Scoops. Thank you, our wonderful mods. Thank you, all of you. Thank you, Colin Guthrie. Oh, I remember growing up with my brother loving Woody Guthrie. You're not related, are you? Thanks, Sonia. New to chat. Adele is new to chat. Can we all welcome Adele as we're all leaving it? It's 11:16. You people keep me talking, don't you? Listen, I love you so much. I will see you on Monday. Thank you, everybody, for all of your incredible support. You are absolutely incredible. And before we go, I think have a blast of this.
Good morning, Grand Rising.
Morning, Grand Rising. Have a fabulous day. Lovely. I will see you Monday. Thank you to everybody. And I'm going to end on a quote. No one is you, and that is your superpower. Take good care of yourself. See you Monday, everybody. Have a brilliant weekend. Love you all.